Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Sunday evening Forex breakdown. My name is Gail Mercer, and I'm going to be the presenter tonight. I would like you to take a moment to read over the Nadex risk disclaimer. Basically, you should never trade with money you cannot afford to lose, even if you're trading the Nadex products. Now, while you're reading over that, can I just do a quick sound check? Can everyone hear me? Can everyone see my screen? Oh, great. Well, for all the mothers in the room, I wish you a happy Mother's Day as well. And let's get started. For those of you that do not know me, my name is Gail Mercer. I am the founder of Traders Help Desk. I've also been a Forex trader for over 15 years. I'm also the author of Trading Nadex Binary Options, Keeping It Simple Strategies, The New Trader's Guide to Trading Nadex Binary Options and Spreads, Trading Nadex Binary Options Using Currencies, and the Trading Nadex Binary Options and Spreads Using Candlestick Patterns. I've also been a prior speaker at the Wyckoff Volume Conference, Traders World, Traders Expo, and TradeStation User Group. The one thing that I specialize in is price formations, and I combine that with support, resistance, and volume analysis. Volume analysis. I would like to invite you to visit tradershelpdesk.com to learn more about me and the indicators I use. Additionally, you can always just send me an email at gm@tradershelpdesk.com, and I will be happy to answer. Now, what I'd like to do is go ahead and first look at the products that Nadex offers. They do have the binaries, they have call spreads, they have touch brackets, and they have 5-minute binaries as well. I trade a lot of the touch brackets now. I really like them. I also trade the binaries, and sometimes I'll trade the 5-minute binaries. Depending on what the market is doing. But, depending on whether you're a trend or a counter trend trader, it is really changes the game. For example, I might have a long-term view that a market is going to go up, and I might do a touch bracket, and at the same time, I can actually do a binary to the short side to take advantage of a smaller intraday move, okay? So as we're going through the markets tonight, just remember there are a lot of different ways that you can combine the Nadex products from a long-term viewpoint, a medium term, as well as an intraday term. And you can kind of mix and match these products to fit what you're wanting to do with the markets, okay? Now, the first thing that I do on Sunday evenings is actually pull up forexfactory.com. This is how I plan my week, okay? Normally, I don't like to trade a lot on Mondays. I will trade sometimes. It's not every single Monday. I like taking Monday and Fridays off. I like the long weekend. So primarily, I'm going to be trading Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, okay? And in this case, I see, okay, we have no reports tonight. We have no reports tomorrow. Tuesday, we have one on the British pound and one on the Aussie. Wednesday, we have an 8:30 report on the Canadian. It is the CPI month over month. Then on the U.S. dollar side, we have the core retail sales and retail sales. Both of those are month over month, so normally you're not going to get this big movement. If it was quarter over quarter, you would probably get a bigger movement. Wednesday night, we do have the employment change and unemployment rate on the Aussie. That comes out at 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. That does create some volatility in the Aussie. Typically, it's about 20 pips that report will move the market, and 20 pips on the Aussie is pretty substantial. Then Thursday, 11:15, we have the Bank of Canada governor speaking. Now, if you actually click on this folder it will actually tell you what he is going to speak about. In this instance, he's holding a press conference about the financial system review in Canada. So, you know, that is one I probably would not trade through if I was trying to intraday trade, let's say a 2-hour binary. That's not one I would want to be in during that period. And then Friday, all day long, they have elections over in Australia. Now, elections can create a lot of volatility, so I typically will not trade a currency that is in the midst of an election. Okay. Now, I want to go, and I'm going to use multi-charts tonight, just because I have the radar screen here, well, the scanner window, excuse me, and it allows me to see an overview of all three of my time frames, mainly from a numerical standpoint. Okay. So if I'm looking at numbers, I need to know what important numbers are. Well, number one, anything that is under this column, which is the RSI, if it is over 50, that would be substantial. Right now, there's nothing over 50. Under the stochastics column, you can see the British pound yen is oversold, as well as the USD. JPY daily is oversold, and it just formed a pivot low. Okay, so this just lets me review everything at one time. Okay, so I'm going to start with the Aussie yen. And as you can see, this is my weekly chart, my daily chart, and my 6 hour. Now, currently over on the weekly chart, we are not overextended. The stochastics is going down, as well as the RSI, and the ADX is showing you a bright red. That just means that the momentum is to the downside. Okay. So for all intents and purposes, the weekly is saying more likely than not, the Aussie is going to continue down, the Aussie yen. Then when I go down to the daily chart, this is where the difference comes in, because on the daily chart, you can actually see, let me put a pin up here. You can see, number one, this is overextended. Okay, so that tells me more likely than not, we should get a retracement back to this ATR. Okay, we'll also have some divergence here, and the RSI is very close to being overextended, not quite there yet, but the ADX has got a magenta dot, and it's making lower highs here. So that tells me that you've got divergence on the ADX, and you have divergence on the RSI, on the stochastics. Typically what will happen is it will try to come back and test this low, and it will fail, and that's what's going to push it back up. Okay, or should push it back up, I should say that. Okay, so I would be watching the 6 hour chart to see if it comes near this line of red dots here, and if it does, I would like to see divergence. And that simply means that it will make a lower high, probably about here, okay? And then that will start the push up. Now, once it starts pushing up, this ATR right here will flip and turn blue and will be below price. So what price will typically do is at first it will go up, then it will come back to test, then it goes up again and it breaks this ATR. It comes below price, but price will come back and test the ATR. Okay, if that happens, that's where my potential entry point would be if this came back to test. If the stochastics and the RSI are headed in opposite directions, stay away from the trade. Not necessarily, because it depends on where your trade's coming in at. Okay, because for example, this is a very short-term stochastics, Yolanda. Okay, so do you see how this was red down here? So this is telling you the market is going to go down. Okay, so the stochastics is going up here. Okay, now if you're a trend trader, do you see how this ATR acted as resistance? Okay, so you could have entered that when you saw them rejecting, and by your analysis, well, the stochastics is going in the opposite direction. Okay, but that doesn't mean a lot because it's a retracement. Okay, I already saw the rejection, and I would have anticipated this bearish bar developing. And that bearish bar will turn the stochastics back down, going into your RSI direction. Does that clarify it for you, Yolanda? Okay. So let's go look at the Aussie dollar. Now, the Aussie dollar, again, the stochastics is going down, the RSI is red, the ADX is red. So for all intents and purposes, you're not overextended. Everything is saying more likely than not, you'll go down. Okay. Now, over on the daily, okay, and this is kind of what I was talking about on the Aussie yen. Do you see how that tested right there? Okay, you have that divergence here. This is where I am anticipating that price will likely go up. Okay, now is it there yet? No, but this is where you come down to a lower time frame and say, okay, does this look like, hey, this might go up? No, it doesn't. In fact, if anything, you're making lower lows here. You came back and made slightly higher here. So that tells me, no, we're going to come back more likely than not and at least test this one. And we could probably go lower. Okay. It's a potential to go lower. Okay. In this case, the divergence here is telling you the opposite. Okay. All right. Let's go look at the euro yen. The euro yen is almost saying identical. It's, more likely than not it's going to go down. Okay. What does the daily say? Okay. Well, the daily, and this is something that's unique to this ADX indicator. The ADX made this magenta peak. Normally, that is indicative that it's going to go up to that ATR. Okay. Now, you're making lower lows. You made slightly higher low there. So that's saying a potential for retracement. This is saying a potential for retracement. And we had a pivot low develop as of Friday. So you have a pivot low formation here. Now, all of this combined together is saying more likely than not, this will go up. But again, I would like to see it break through this ATR, let the ATR plot below, let it come back to test this area. It's probably going to be around 123, and then I would analyze it for an entry, okay, but not before. Any questions on that one? Okay, let's go look at the euro dollar. Now, the euro dollar, you can see that you're starting to curl upwards on the stochastics, and you have had some divergence from prior lows, okay? Now, that doesn't mean that this is, going to turn. Actually, it means it's going to go back, and more than likely it's going to test for resistance. So you have higher lows here, lower lows here, okay? So that just tells me it's probably going to go back and it's going to test for resistance. Now, I want to look at the daily to see if that confirms what I'm seeing over here. Right now, we're at an ATR, okay? So that would be significant because this ATR can act as resistance. Because this still has some room to go, I think it might break through this ATR. Now, this is the pattern that I was telling you about before. I want to see the ATR go from red to blue, and it did. Now I actually want price to come back and test this ATR, which is right at about 1.1200, okay? If this comes back and if it tests this area and this area holds, in other words, it's going to support price, then I would consider an entry on the basis that this is likely to go back to the ATR on the weekly chart. Any questions on the euro dollar? Let's go look at the British pound yen. Now, the British pound yen, you're at an ATR on the weekly, okay? That can act as a support area for price to go up, especially with this curling over and this is blue. What I don't like is that we're red on the ADX. I would prefer for that to be blue. But again, I'm going to go down to the daily and see if this is confirming that price may go up, okay? Well, one, you're overextended on the stochastics. So I would think that we would at least go back and test 145 to see if that's going to act as resistance to push it down, especially considering that we're overextended here, okay? But remember, these two are both saying you're in a downtrend, you're in a downtrend. In other words, the momentum is to the downside. Then when you go and you look at the 6-hour chart, it's pretty much saying the same thing. You are in a downtrend. You're more than likely going to come back and test this low here. And you will need to analyze it, especially if it goes lower. Let's say that it comes here and the stochastics curls around and then it starts up, okay? Well, when that happens, you're going to have that peak there, and then you would have a divergence here that says, okay, more than likely, now is the time where you're going to go back and test for resistance on the daily, and potentially take out this level of white dots, okay? Let's go and look at the British pound dollar. Okay, the British pound dollar, right now this is saying upwards. This is saying upwards. Because this is dark blue here, this is up, but it's not very strong, okay? Now, you do see that you have this line of ATRs, and they are moving up. I would anticipate that this white dot is exceeded. That's about all I can tell you off of the weekly. When I go down to the daily, it seems that this line of ATRs is holding at the moment. This is right at the point of being overextended. And if we get a bullish bar tomorrow, then that will make these stochastics start to go up. It would also give you a zero line reject on the RSI, okay? When I go down to the 6-hour chart, this line of dots is actually acting as a support area right now. If this bar continues to be bullish, then it will probably exceed this ATR, but this stochastics is going to have to curl up, and this is going to have to flip to the upside. Otherwise, this will continue down, and it could actually break through this level of ATRs right here. Any questions on the British pound dollar? I would be watching the 6-hour chart on that one, because I think that's this is going to be the key, is the 6-hour chart, I think. Okay, let's go look at the USD CAD. Now, the USD CAD has been struggling at this ATR on the weekly chart. And what I want to watch is whether this continues to hold price back or not, okay? As it stands right now, you have some divergence there, provided you have another bearish bar form, okay? Over on the daily, if you looked at that and thought it was divergence, it's not, okay? It's doing what it's supposed to. You're making lower highs, you're making lower lows. The one thing that I would notice about that is it is a potential triangle, and I like trading triangles. So the first thing that I would do would be to snap a line here, and you snap it on the lows, and then I'm going to snap a line on the trend line. And if that holds, you have a descending triangle, and that would be indicative that the market will more than likely go down. We had a couple of these last week. And if you measure from the high at 35.23 down to 33.76, that's about 140 pip move. So you would expect it to go down 140 pips if this plays out, okay? And if they break through this red line, if they close above it, then it invalidates the pattern. But with the stochastic starting to head down, there's been divergence along the RSI. There's also been divergence on the ADX. This pattern may actually play out. It will be a nice pattern if it does, because that's going to be a big move. This would be a case where, you know, the touch brackets, really good for that one. Additionally, over here, you've had divergence on the 6-hour chart. This is where I would think that they would come back, probably test around 34.83, and that's just about where that line is, okay? So that's where what I would be watching for as far as an entry onto the USD Canadian, okay? Especially because it's at this ATR over here, okay? Any questions on that one? Let's look at the USD Swiss franc. Now the USD Swiss franc is, here you can see you're making lower highs with higher highs in price. So this is a divergence. And actually the divergence is indicating that more than likely they're going to come back and test for support. I would think that they would come back to about 1 here, 1.0000, and that would be the support area, okay? If you look down to the daily, you have this line of dots here. They could also form support right here, Now, we do need a bullish bar. If we have a bullish bar, that will cause the stochastics to start going up. And are you seeing that on the 6 hour? Well, you're overextended here, and you're coming back to test this low right here. So if they test it, they do not close below it, and it forms a bullish bar, then that would potentially kick off the retracement on the daily chart. And again, the daily chart would need to come back to about 1.02, and that's where they would find the resistance at, if they're going to push it all the way back to here. Because what will happen is they will come down, they will go back up, and then they will come down. This would be the ATR from the weekly. All right, let's go and look at the last one, which is the USD and JPY. Now, in this case, the weekly is saying down. The stochastics is going down. The RSI is probably going to cross below zero. The ADX is telling you down as well. But when you look at the daily, this is one of my favorite patterns, almost to the T. You're overextended on the stochastics. You're overextended on the ADX. It would make it a lot better if it was overextended on the RSI. Okay. Just these two alone indicate that more than likely you're going to get a retracement to test for resistance, and the target would be at 111, which is the ATR. Okay. Over here, you see that they have already come back and they have already tested this low. It's formed a double bottom formation. So this should be enough to actually push it through this ATR. Okay. Anything can happen, but that's what I would be anticipating, especially considering that you've been overextended here, overextended here, overextended here. And the divergence was the kickoff for this retracement. Okay. I do think we're probably going to get a retracement on the USD JPY. The first area to watch would be this ATR on the 6 hour. The next area to watch would be the ATR over here on the daily. If they hold, we're probably going to see more downward movement on the USD JPY. And that's all of the currencies. Does anybody have any questions? I do appreciate all of you joining me tonight for the Forex overview. Oh, well, thank you, Kathy. Happy Mother's Day to you as well. Now, remember, my website is www.tradershelpdesk.com, and you can also email me at gm@tradershelpdesk.com as well if you have any questions at all. I didn't do the Euro British Pound. Any other questions? All right. I hope everyone has a wonderful night, and I'll see you again next Sunday, same time, same place.